how the fuck did I get here? Like, I've been in these movies that break box office records. I'm a published author who's written an autobiography addiction memoir. I'm a skateboarder who's toured the world. I was endorsed by Gatorade. How the fuck am I here?
It's estimated that 20 million Americans struggle with substance use disorder, and I used to count myself among those 20 million Americans as an individual who struggles with substance use disorder. My journey took me to multiple treatment centers, several different prisons, and a lot of run-ins with the criminal justice system. And not until I found recovery at age 20 did I realize my true purpose. My purpose in life has been to help people find recovery. My name's Chris Dreisbach. Welcome to Repurposed. Perfect. So glad that cloud left. So let's start out. Know this is about recovery, but let's start with the early days. Let's start with some skateboarding talk. Let's talk about your skateboarding career, maybe how that led into some things. Let's go with that.
The majority of the things that we'll get into today are not things that I knew or understood at the time, meaning past tense, right? Like my life, as life in general, is all in retrospect and lived forward and learned backwards. So oddly enough, the gift that I was blessed with, because I believe that we're all blessed with these gifts, and mine happened to be skateboarding, and I had the blessing of finding it. Because you could be the best ping pong player in the world, but God may not see fit to put a paddle in your hand. Whatever that, I understand the word God can be very discouraging, so I don't want to get hung up on this. He's this religious fucking guy. It's not me. I'm insanely spiritual, and it's just a power greater than myself, and what I know is it's not me. But my God saw fit to place a skateboard in my hand at the age of 7. And that night when my mother put me to bed, she said, "Brandon, what would you like me to do with this skateboard?" And I said, "I want it in bed with me." She said, "Why?" And I said, "Because if I die, I want it to go with me," right? Like at the moment that board touched my hand, I knew I was going to be a skateboarder for the rest of my life. And fast forward to today, I literally attribute everything that I've accomplished in life to skateboarding. And skateboarding was the one common theme that consistently stayed in my life throughout this rather sporadic, sometimes traumatic life that I lived. It was a direct result of my addiction. And as a skateboarder, I refused to accept failure. You know, no is not an option. Skateboarding weeds out the quitters. And I'm used to failing until I ultimately succeed one day. And that's basically my life today is process of elimination, but backwards. Like everything I tried that didn't work led to the last thing I tried, which was the first thing that worked, was what I never wanted to do. right? Because as a skateboarder, I'm defiant by nature. I fucking hate authority, and I refuse to conform, right? I mean, as a skateboarder, as a kid, you've now given me this board, and I basically destroy property for a living as a child growing up. So the odds were against me to being, you know, what some might call today an asset to society. But oddly enough, because of skateboarding and it allowing me to make it through some times that I didn't see a way out of, as life in general, full circle, has allowed me to become an asset to society.
The way I see things, the whole world is intertwined, you know? So
Yeah.
skateboarding was where you had your first real entry into the world, your real entry into your passions and the things that you loved. And that could have gone any number of ways. So like, let's talk about when you first signed with, forgive me, I'm not well into the skateboarding world, but when you first signed with that tour thing.
Being from Baltimore, growing up in Baltimore, and receiving that first board, the moment I got that board, there was no reason for like a plan B, a trait, or an option. I knew that I was going to skateboard for the rest of my life and make a career out of it. And that came by way of another pro skater out of Baltimore by the name of Bucky Lasik, who rode for Pal, and you know he's a household name. And he took me on, and he was my mentor, and I emulated him. I wanted to be him. I wanted to act like him, dress like him, and he was the guy that got me into, you know, the professional side of that world, the endorsements, the sponsorships, and he got me connected with Pal Peralta, who later I was signed with, rode for, and did very well with, and achieved everything that I wanted and believed was possible at a younger age, you know. And I some of the best memories of my life were traveling with these older guys, touring the world with these professional skateboarders that otherwise were close to like a figment of my imagination, living vicariously through them by picking up a skate magazine or watching a video.
So when you started traveling with them, again, forgive me, I don't know your exact time points or time frames, but when would you say you started to slide into alcohol, drugs, et cetera, et cetera? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the juxtaposition was literally the blink of an eye with my skateboarding career into my alcoholism and addiction. From 7 to 16, I ate it, I breathed it, I slept it, I dreamt it, I became it. I had achieved everything I wanted at a really young age. And I had a very promising future and career in the world of skateboarding. You know, I'd go with Bucky to stay at Tony Hawk's house for like weeks on end and tour with all these professional skaters, being sponsored by Pal and having video parts and pictures and mags and at a young age. And then, you know, I believe that my alcoholism and addiction came by way of me being genetically predisposed, right? My father was an addict, his father was an addict. I have a brother and a sister by which a different man produced them, and they, as well as my mother, could take or leave a drink or a drug, could care less. My father, his father, myself, I'm more kind of cut from the cloth of, if you buy an 8-ball of Coke, why the fuck wouldn't you finish it that night? Why would you put it away? If you order a bottle of wine, why are you leaving before it's finished? Like, it aggravates and angers me. And that's what sets us apart. And it just happened so fast. But it was a progression that was taking place because at that young age, achieving... Do we need to stop for that?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, it's cool. I get it.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, at that young age, having achieved all my childhood dreams, with that came a lot of responsibilities. I had to produce video parts. I had to be present and on my A game for tours that consisted of us going from city to city, state to state, doing demos at each skate shop, and all while keeping up with the best of the bests at a really young age. So although it was my dream and everything I'd ever hoped for, once I received it, it was a job, for lack of better words, and it required all of me. There was no like, you get, Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 and then you clock out and take a break. It was 24/7. And the progression with alcoholism kind of kicked in. My father, a little backstory, the why of the product, if you will, is my mother is an amazing woman. She raised 3 kids on her own. Recently retired as a nuclear physicist on the board of Mercy Hospital in Baltimore City. My brother is an attorney in the White House who practices pensions and benefits. My father never held a job a day in his life. He taught me if and when I go to prison how to conduct myself. And he ran with the Hells Angels. He was a rather unsavory kind of fellow, if you will. He was around just enough to let us know he wasn't around. And he ultimately succumbed to his addiction and acquired the taste and liking of crack cocaine, and his body shut down, and he's no longer with us. So my mother would take me to work with her because, God forbid, they left me with my father, because his behavior was rather sporadic and erratic, to say the least, and you never knew what the outcome was going to be depending on the intake of or consumption of his narcotic that day. And so she would take me to the hospital, and I kind of was raised in the hospital. I would just kind of go from floor to floor, and I would skate in the parking garage all day. Although I couldn't stand my father, and I made it a point to excel at everything I did in my life, to allow everyone to see that I would never become that man or that bum. Because oddly enough, from a very young age, I lived with that after-school special, or that cautionary tale of what a drink or a drug can do to you, and more so what I never wanted to become. So ignorance wasn't even bliss, right? Like, I knew it and I saw it, because my father, Jerome, was the nicest guy in the world. But when he didn't come home for dinner at 6, because he was a great cook, and when he didn't come home for dinner and we heard the bikes pull in the driveway at 3:30 in the morning, we shook like leaves, because we didn't know who was walking through that door, but we did know whoever walked through the door was not going to be a good version. So although I really wanted to just excel at everything, to never have to allow someone to endure that kind of behavior, oddly enough, what I didn't know then that I know now is I didn't stand a chance. I was kind of absorbing it unbeknownst to me. And then the moment, like, he sold a lot of drugs, and I would go into his leather jacket that he used to hang in this closet, and I remember, like, inside of the pocket I would pull out some herb, and I would go to the sink and I would pull out the
stopper,
the thing to put so the seeds don't come through
I know what you're talking about.
I'm showing a blank. Like a
screen?
A screen, yes. Yeah, there we go. Like a screen. And I'd put it in the pipe and make a makeshift screen and smoke. So the progression started to take place. And then with that, the drinking and then, a little bit of blow and then some Xanax. And then oddly enough, I had started to sell a lot of herb, because now this new outlet that I had found. Prior to, I was a really successful kid, right? Like, I had these major endorsements, traveling the world, signing autographs, video parts in skateboarding magazines. And so people weren't overseeing me. right? I'm a 15-year-old kid, and my boss per se is a team manager in Santa Barbara, California, and I'm living in Baltimore, Maryland. So me checking into my job, if you will, no accountability, would be skating to the 7-Eleven, pump the payphone with like $5 in quarters to make a long distance call to Santa Barbara to my team captain at Pal Peralta, and tell him what tricks I'd been working on or learning. So I was able to kind of drift out to sea pretty far before anyone recognized that, like, the boat had left the dock. Because with this newfound release that I have, it's relinquished all the responsibilities that I have to adhere to or show up for, right? And I can finally check out from work, where before I couldn't do that. And I didn't have to like produce these video parts, and I didn't have to like go throw my body down stairs and ramps and show up for tours and travel from state to state in minivans. You know, it was just this carefree life that, looking at and recognizing now the disconnection from reality that had already taken place, and I hadn't even acknowledged that there was a problem, let alone addressing it, is so great, right? That disconnection from reality, where the abnormal has become the normal, has taken place already so much, and I haven't even thought about or had any consequences to my actions yet, but I can see it today. And the thing that turned into like it's the typical story. The Friday, Saturday turns into the Tuesday, Wednesday, then to the Monday, and then it's Monday to Monday. And before I know it, I've hooked up with a guy who sells me 20, 30 pounds of herb, and I'm now in the drug business, and I'm selling weed in abundance. And this guy, who I'm a big fan of, I just like the carefree lifestyle that he lives, and seems to be pretty successful at it, and drives a Lexus and wears a Rolex and eats at Ruth Chris, but dresses and looks like shit. And I'm like, dude, this is doable. And he always had this little bag that he would carry in the top of a Bic pen, you know, the pen cap. He would fold the bag over and put it in the top. And then I'd always see him pull the bag out and hit it. And I was so fascinated that this guy, who from the external perspective was very successful, very big home in the county, lots of land, beautiful girlfriend, lots of money, extravagant trips, pays for everybody, but yet depends and relies on this little fucking bag. And he used to pay me $500 to ride into the hood with him to cop dope. And I'm like, I was just a fan of him and wanted to spend time around him. And I was hoping that unbeknownst to me, I was kind of hoping that he would take me under his wing and be my mentor, just like Bucky did in the skateboarding world, but in this drug business. Be careful what you ask for, right? Because he did. And one day I had sold 20 pounds of herb to somebody, and they were short some money, and they said, I have some heroin. And I'm like, all right, knocked off a couple $100 from the bill, and I just put it in my sock drawer. And I forgot about it until like months later I had found it and I hit it. But the progression of not only the substance intake, but just that lifestyle had been taking place, and I'm pretty far out to sea at this point. And people were recognizing a change in my behaviors and my patterns. And I no longer motivated or have a drive to want to skate, to want to film, to want to connect with my friends. I've kind of isolated, disconnected, disassociated with anything that's productive. And then one day I received that call from Pal, and they said, look, Novak, we have one or two options we could do with you. We could put you into treatment, we can help you save your life, and you can continue to skate for Pal, or you could quit the team. From 7 to 16, I ate it, I breathed it, I slept it, I dreamt it, I became it. It is all that ever mattered to me. And I don't have a breath of fresh air in my lungs when I said I quit. And the disconnection from reality that's already taken place, and I haven't even stepped foot into my first treatment center, today, 13 treatment centers later, fucking around the block a lot, trying to find the sobriety that I have now, talking to you, is insane. It's absolutely insane. And what I know to be true today is that anything that stood between me and it, meaning a drink or a drug, it must and will go. And it was never personal, it was just business.
So I think that's that's one of those things that folks who don't have substance use disorder, I think that's one of those things that those folks will never be able to fully understand. Something that was the most important thing in your world for those years, those 9 years, was skateboarding, and you literally just dumped it off on the side of the road without another thought.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to continue, or you needed to continue, the substance that you were using.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that first time that you did end up going to treatment, or anything that led up to that first time going to treatment.
It's funny. So the first time I took it upon myself to be a willing participant and enter into treatment was not when I was given that ultimatum by Pal to accept the help, which one would think would be the moment. Take it. This is it. Save your career, save your life. Get your shit together, boy. No, not at all. So I turned down that offer. A few months had passed. I now had this new found freedom that was unexpected. I had no flights to catch, no tours to do, no video parts to produce. And then one day my mother and my girlfriend come to me and they said, "Brandon, we have a great idea for you." And I said, "What's that?" They said, "We want you to go to treatment." Now, I had just turned down this opportunity from my dream. What in the fuck would allow you to think I'd accept it from them? The disconnection from reality is insane. I thought about it for a moment. I said, you know what? That's an amazing idea. A, I have the time. B, I'm going to report to said treatment center, and I'll report back to you guys and share with you why I don't belong there. Why this is just an overreaction at best. You just caught me at a bad time, on a bad way, and a bad day. Tomorrow is going to be different. Right? What I didn't know then that I understand now is that tomorrow I'm going to wake up to repeat yesterday's actions and be stuck in Groundhog's Day for 22 fucking years. But I didn't see that coming. So I'm entering into this treatment center with a closed mind and a closed heart, comparing out, proving a point why I don't belong, focusing only on the differences, not the similarities. Because after all, you people are my father, and fuck you. Right? So there's a few things that I'm up against here. All of which play in my favor as to why I'm not an alcoholic and I don't belong in a facility. Right? I can drink and drug without repercussions. You just kind of got the narrative twisted here. Let's backtrack. Take a breath, everybody. And I believe that to be true. And I have the privilege of entering my first treatment center at the ripe young age of 17. And I'm in Baltimore City, and my mother and my girlfriend, they pack these bags, and as quick as they take me to the facility, they drop me off, they're gone. And I'm met by a very nice, welcoming woman out front. And she says, "Are you Mr. Novak?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." And she said, "Come with me." And I take my bags, and she escorts me into this cafeteria. And in this cafeteria, it's completely empty. Not a soul in sight. And she leaves me in this cafeteria. And there's these really big, bright interrogation style lights shining down on me. I'm ill as a research monkey. I'm detoxing off heroin, right? Things aren't looking good. And out of nowhere, this older black gentleman walks into the room, and he walks directly up to me, and he said, "White boy, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Heroin." He said, "How old are you?" I said, 17. He said, "Do yourself a favor and don't turn 18 in a place like this." Now, as quick as he came, he left. He nor I had no idea the significance of that simple conversation was ever going to have on my life. Right? Mind you, I'm only focusing on the differences, not the similarities, proving a point why I don't belong. This is an overreaction at best. And what I could tell you about that gentleman was where the 4 teeth were placed in his mouth. Because at the time, I had all mine. He's black, I'm white. He's 70 to 73-ish. I'm 17. He smokes crack. I successfully do heroin. All right, he's homeless. I live with my fucking mother and my girlfriend. God bless that man. I'm really grateful he found the answer for which he's in search of, and I mean that. But what I can't tell you about that facility is my therapist's name. That relapse prevention packet they're shoving down my throat. The healthy and unhealthy boundaries they're trying to instill in me. Because if I can relate to those things, that means I can relate to being one of you people, and I want no part. And I successfully completed that 30-day treatment center. I did. All while being in there, never building up a defense against the moment that I will be tempted upon completion of the program. But I didn't turn 18 in a place like that. That old man had no idea what he was talking about. This is what my mind told me. I did not turn 18 in a place like that, but here's the hit. Ultimately, I turned 19, 20, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, 29, 32, 34, 35, 37, 38 in a jail or a treatment center. And every year I'd look back of whatever cell, of whatever jail I happened to be in, or whatever bed of whatever treatment center I happened to be in, and think back to that older man and say, maybe if me, myself, Brandon Novak, would have listened to him with an open mind and an open heart, I would not continuously find myself in this situation year after year. You know, so all these attempts at sobriety, I don't look at any of them as a failure, right? Because all unbeknownst to me, these seeds were being planted along the way. And then one day, you know, ignorance was no longer bliss. I had to be held accountable for what I knew. I could no longer stumble through this blindly. And it was really easy for me to look back and recognize that the common denominator in my problems were fucking me. And if I just get the fuck out of my way, maybe I stand a chance. And all I had been doing for 20 years was rearranging the furniture on the Titanic. My ship sank without fucking fail every time. But I didn't understand it until I understood it. So that was my attempt at my first facility.
So we've worked our way through the first treatment. Let's talk about some of the, if you remember them, not everybody does remember this stuff. Let's talk about some of the feelings that you felt when you were leaving. Did you feel like you were prepared? Did you feel like you were going right back into the same stuff that you were doing before? Did you want to prove everybody wrong and show them that you could live life? Wherever you want to go from there, let's talk about that.
You know, it's ironic, actually, looking back and describing the feelings that I was overcome with upon completing a 30-day program. And my alcoholism and addiction, it's so complex and it's so layered, and there's so many different narratives depending upon the time of my life and who I was surrounding myself with and what my outcome that I was trying to achieve was. Because sometimes it was genuine and you know, I was really going to do this and I believed that I could do this, but only if I did it the way that I wanted to do it. And then there were other times that it was going to work just long enough to get the parole officer to stop making me come every 30 days to give him a piss. It was going to work long enough to then allow my now today ex-fiance to fucking leave me alone and realize that I can drink wine like a normal human being, to allow my friends Bam and the guys from Jackass to believe that maybe I could show up and film a day without being a complete menace to everything and everybody. You know, so there was like different reasons for different seasons of what my intentions were for not only going to treatment, but completing them. And then there were times where I didn't even complete them and I left. But ultimately what I know to be true today is the reason why I got beat to fuck so many times I stepped into the ring with my addiction is because I underestimated the opponent that I was up against. I was never, and not even close to being armed with the proper facts, meaning I had no defense or combative measures to take when the urge became so overwhelming that like sitting on my hands didn't work, calling a fucking sponsor didn't work, taking away any mode of transportation didn't work. They talk about that word trigger. Triggers were when my eyelids opened, you know, and there were a lot of times that I did not want to get high, and I understood and knew clearly what the repercussions were going to be. And I remember literally crying while shooting dope, crying because I knew that, like, she's going to leave me. She's going to catch me. The moment she walks through that door, she's going to know I'm under the influence. He's going to fire me. I'm going to be homeless. Like, I literally would be crying, crushing up the pills in the bathroom after I just came home from prison. I had just served my time. My fiance, who's now my ex, because they like to get between me and it, and they have to go, she had got rid of our one place and moved us to another and completely redecorated it, right? Trying to change the geographical set to get a different outcome. And I understand that. While she was trying to love me and all these things that unfortunately don't really work well for an alcoholic of my kind. And I remember, although loving her so much and wanting everything that she was offering and believed and knew how beautiful the outcome was going to be, I couldn't fucking control myself. And that was like the worst feeling in the world. It was the worst. And at that point, I was just like a heroin addict that wanted to kill himself on a daily basis. But I just didn't want to hurt myself in the process. So every day I had to, like, make it through to know that ultimately my demise was not far off. The most I had ever made upon completing a treatment center was 30 days, completely sober. And I remember at the time, my fiance, she's like, if you just drink wine, you'll be great. And I bought into so much what this rehab was telling me that they said, Novak, you're different. At the bottom of that glass of wine is a needle every time. And for some reason, I believed what they told me. And foolish me, I got on the phone and I called my fiance, who was still giving me the green light and approval to drink when I got home. I said, Apple, I can't drink when I come home. And she said, why? And I said, because I'm different. There's a needle at the bottom of my wine glass every time. And she said, that makes complete sense. And then when I went home and I wanted to drink, I fucking couldn't. I sabotaged myself, right? Because I bought into what those nut jobs were saying. I drank their Kool-Aid, right? And I was so regretful of that. And I remember every day, because she worked in a bar. We lived in Westchester, a little party town, and I wanted to drink every day. And I was so angry, and I hated everything about everybody because I had lost the right to drink like a productive member of society. When after all, I don't shake when I don't have it. I don't steal to get it. I don't lie and manipulate to hide my drink. You know, I couldn't comprehend how one led to the other. Until ultimately I just drank. And I was happy again. Weird.
That does happen every time.
Yeah, it did exactly what I had always expected it to do. Until that's when the problem happened, when it no longer worked for me. That was, and we'll get to that at the end, but that was like one of the game-changing moments.
So you want to talk a little bit about some of the Jackass stuff and then the movies that you got to be in and, you know, give them the whole...
Yeah, so how I tripped and fell into the world that some people that are watching might recognize me from, like Viva La Bam and CKY and Jackass and Bam's Unholy Union, and was because as a kid growing up in Baltimore, being a skateboarder with Bucky Lasik, every weekend we would travel to Pennsylvania to the skate park called Cheapskates. And at Cheapskates, I met what was going to become my best friend / arch enemy, a fellow by the name of Bam Margera. And him and I were exactly the same in every aspect. We looked alike, we talked alike, we skated alike, we dressed alike, we did the same tricks, we liked the same things to skate, meaning transition, mini ramps, you know, and we had created this friendship, and this bond grew, and we'd become best friends. And every year we'd practice for this one particular contest called the NSAs, and it was always held at Bricktown in New Jersey. And either he would win or I would win religiously. And one year I didn't show up for that contest. And Bucky did. And Bam went to Bucky and said, yo, where's Novak? And Bucky said, I think he's on heroin. And Bam was so young, he said, what's that? Like, he had never heard that word. And as time progressed, his career continued to excel. He created the CKYs, which gave birth to he created the CKY videos, which created the birth of Viva La Bam, which transcended into Jackass. And now my life as a guy who skated for PAL, sponsored, traveling the world, touring, demos, had completely like declined. And I'm now a homeless heroin addict living on the streets of Baltimore, eating out of trash cans and sleeping in shooting galleries in West Baltimore. At that point, skateboarding had become like the woman that you loved the most in the world, and you fucked up one day and you cheated on her and she caught you and she was gone, never to look back again. And you can't get over that because you know how bad you fucked up and you'd give everything in the world to go back and redo that. That's how skateboarding had become to me at that point because of my heroin, right? Like, I had recognized that I had took for granted this amazing gift that provided me the most happiness I've ever felt in life. And so I avoided it at all costs. I saw skaters, I went the other way. I heard skateboarding, I put fucking heaven, like I just... So I'm homeless, I'm running around Baltimore, and when days were really bad, there was this skate shop in Fells Point called Select, and I would go in there and I'd ask them for like 10 or 20 bucks. But that was like when it took a lot to get me there. And on this particular day, you know, the synchronicity, I've now today been sober long enough to look back and recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to this chair right here, right now, that prove to me how powerful my higher power is and how long he's been doing for me. One day I was pushed to the point of no return, and I had no other options to go into the skate shop and try to ask for money. And I had never done that. I've done it maybe twice in my whole career of being a homeless heroin addict, which is, you know, almost probably 14 years. And this day I did that, and they said, we're not going to give you any money, Novak. But Bam was here yesterday, and he was doing a demo with the team that he now rode for, which was Toy Machine. And he asked if we ever saw you, and we said no, we maybe see you once a year at best, and that you'd come in here and ask for some money. And he left his phone number. And with his phone number, he also left an offer. And he wanted us to tell you, if you want to get off heroin and you want to get back into skateboarding and get clean, to call him, and he'll help you. I didn't call that day, but a few days later, I went to a payphone. Right, and I put in 50 cents. And 50 cents to a homeless heroin addict is like $1,000. And I put in 50 cents and I dialed the number, and I'm waiting to make sure a machine doesn't pick up and take my money. Like, I'm ready. And all of a sudden someone answers and they say, hey, Fairman's. And Fairman's is a skate shop in Westchester. So he didn't give me his direct line, but he gave me the number to a skate shop in Westchester. And I said, hey, is Bam there? They said, who's this? And I said, it's Novak. And they knew who I was. And they said, Novak, he literally was just in here. And he said he was going next door to get food. Hold on for a second. And they went next door and they got him, and he came back. And he got on the phone, and he's like, said something where we picked up right where we left off. You know, he didn't make it more uncomfortable than it already was. He didn't add insult to injury. He didn't pour gas to the fire. But in that call, he said, you want to come live with me? Do you want to come to Westchester? I'll let you be on Viva La Bam. I'll let you live in my house. I'll pay for everything. The only thing I ask is that you don't do heroin. And literally that night, I was on a Greyhound bus from Baltimore to Westchester. And I got there, and he took me to Fairman's, and he got me all these clothes. And he took me home to his parents, and he said, Novak's going to be living here. I had been living on that animalistic level for so long. And there was nothing more that I wanted in this world at that time was to feel some humanity and connection and be talked with, not to or at. And he was doing all that within the blink of an eye. And I hadn't felt like a human in so long that it kind of brought me back to reality and made me believe in humanity just a little bit. But on the flip side of that coin, I was devastated and I was heartbroken because I knew as these new opportunities were being presented and this life was about to change, that it was only for a matter of time. Because I knew that, like, I couldn't stop doing heroin. And I knew that I was going to burn that bridge. And I'm telling you, I did. You know, what I was talking about before, no matter how much I sit on my fucking hands, no matter how far on a deserted island you put me, like, history is destined to repeat itself. And I have no say-so in the fucking matter because I was not armed with the facts. I had no defense. And yet again, I'm going to destroy myself and the nice things that you're doing for me. And I did. And he'd kick me out, and I'd go back and forth. Baltimore, Westchester, Baltimore, Westchester. Ironically enough, though, everyone was very well-versed on the fact that I was not allowed to be given heroin or pills, right? Like, I could do coke and drink because that was socially acceptable. I didn't lie to get it. I didn't steal your car to get more. I didn't fall asleep in mid-conversation. You know, I wasn't annoying. And everyone else was doing it, so it was cool. And I understand, like, they didn't know, and they were just trying to do the best of what they had. But my body doesn't understand that. It doesn't get that. It can't comprehend that knowledge. So everyone knew not to enable the opioid fucking behaviors with me. So I made it a point to never find, get, or make connections in Westchester or Pennsylvania with heroin or pills because I knew that I'd burn that bridge as well. And I didn't want to do that. I'd burnt every bridge in Baltimore. I'd had a taste of this, like, good life of everything that I yearned for. I was given a chance yet again and becoming pretty successful in the midst of it. And the scales of justice were pretty easy to weigh out. I make life very difficult for myself and my addiction here and just go sick and ill a lot of days. Or I just go back to being a homeless heroin addict in Westchester when I could still be on Viva La Bam, live in a castle, $1 million house, and like hook up with tons of chicks in Westchester and be the man and, you know, make money. So intentionally, I made it very difficult for myself to get heroin. I had no driver's license, and people watched me very closely, so I couldn't just run back to Baltimore. So occasionally I'd come up with lies to get back to there, and I'd disappear for a few days, and then he'd kick me out, and a lot of back and forths. And then ultimately, you know, I had met my then fiance in Westchester. I moved out of BAMS, kind of created my own unit in my own house, and it was a little harder for me to get kicked out of. I tried to stay clean. Same thing with BAM with her. Like, I really wanted to keep it. I saw, like, the promise in it and had yearned for that, you know, sense of togetherness. Because after all, the opposite of addiction is connection. And while consumed in my active alcoholism and addiction, there was no connection. I was just isolated and disconnected. But unfortunately, my disease doesn't give a fuck about that. And if you tell me you love me, I equate that to $10 now. I fucking got you. And I don't want to do it. I don't. So I'd make it very difficult on myself to score. I would never come into Philly or Kensington. I didn't want to, like, end up selling one of his Lamborghinis to a corner boy, which, like, I would really do. You know, and, like, that's, like, realistically a thing that would happen. So...
Not sure how you come back from that one. Selling a Lamborghini to a corner guy.
You would, but somehow in that world, if it, you know, it actually might do good, and I'd get, like, crazy ratings from that, and it would turn into some great like storyline, or you know what I mean? Like,
That is
it was
true.
crazy, yeah. In that world of Viva La Bam and Jackass, it's the role that I played, which was myself, which was a drug addict, is a junkie's dream, right? The more outlandish my behaviors were, the more insane my antics became, the higher the ratings were, the more in demand I was, the more money I made. That's like an alcoholic or an addict's dream.
That is.
Right? Paired with the fact that I have this delusional alcoholic brain already that lies to me in my own voice, that makes me believe the unbelievable. Paired with the fact that I justify and minimize the severity of the disease that I've already agreed with the diagnosis of, I don't stand a fucking chance. And I don't see that at the time.
So how close, again, timeline me here. How close are we to what Today Inc. was the last spot you went to? How close are we to that?
Well, there was a lot
year-wise.
in the interim of all these achievements and peaks and valleys, if you will. I'm in and out of treatment. And I would come in and I would like loiter with the intent to recover. I would go into these facilities and they'd say, "Okay, Mr. Novak, we're going to need you to get a sponsor." No problem. "We're going to need you to go ahead and get one of those home groups." You got it. "I'm going to need you to also create a fellowship of like-minded people such as yourself who are trying to achieve the same thing as you, which is another day sober." Pff, you fucking got it. I mean, everything that this therapist is suggesting that I do, which by the way, I'm convinced that she wants to fuck me, right? So everything that she is telling me to do, I'm going to do because she wants to fuck me, and I will fuck her because I'm going to make her know that I'm like the model client. And B, everything she's saying that I should do is like a Monday morning for me, right? Go to these meetings, hang out with these people, get a guy to show you the way. Like, I wasn't the kid that would walk in class 20 minutes late and fear that you're staring at me. I was the kid that would walk in class 20 minutes late, believing you've been waiting for me. So everything they're suggesting I do is like, fuck, bring it on, man. And without fail, every time they'd say, "But we're also going to need you to go ahead and experience those 12 steps." And I'd say, I'm beginning to sense a fucking theme of overreaction here. And for the life of me, I can't understand how I've now found myself Christmas Eve in West Baltimore in a shooting gallery. And all I have on is a white 3X t-shirt, a pair of big baggy jeans, and these Timberland boots, and I'm huddled into a corner. It's like 38 degrees out, and I have to put my arms into my shirt over my knees, and my head into my shirt, and through my nose and my mouth, because it's the only thing I can do to produce heat. How the fuck did I get here? Like, I've been in these movies that break box office records. I'm a published author who's written an autobiography addiction memoir. I'm a skateboarder who's toured the world. I was endorsed by Gatorade. How the fuck am I here? But ultimately what took place is the pain became great enough. Several things took place. The pain became great enough. I continued to grow older, meaning maturity was setting in. I continued to attempt to get sober, meaning these seeds were being planted unbeknownst to me. And most importantly, the drug and the alcohol stopped working. So no matter how much coke and dope, like no matter how much of a speedball I shot, that delusional effect no longer appeared, which used to allow me to escape the reality that I had created for myself. So now standing on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park, waiting for men to blow me for money is not only like doable, it's almost kind of like desirable. Right? It allows me to escape this reality. Now it's just par for the course. Makes anything enjoyable almost. But now, no matter how much dope I shoot, no matter how many pills I eat, lines I sniff, that delusional effect is no longer appearing. Which means I can no longer escape this miserable reality and existence I, Brandon Novak, had created for myself. Now by force, I'm being forced to accept responsibility for my actions. That moment of clarity takes place no matter how fucking high I get. I can't escape this miserable existence I fucking created for myself. What the fuck do you do then? I've come way too fucking far to turn back. I've given it my career. I've given it my loved ones. I've given it my home. I've given it my sexuality when it asks. I fucking give. And now you fucking motherfucker are gonna stop showing up and doing for me what you've always done? That's gotten me way past the point of no fucking return? Fuck you. What do you do? Well, what I did was at that moment finally admitted complete defeat. I admitted complete defeat. And at that moment, when I admitted complete defeat, I secured the ultimate victory. And I had no idea. That pain had given me the motivation to finally become open-minded just long enough to look at my part that I've played to create this outcome and say, maybe, you know what? You know what I do know? Is that I don't fucking know. And my very best has put me here yet again. So everything in the blink of an eye that was my code of ethic, the things that I lived by, had to be reversed. You know, prior to that, to fight was to live, to fight was to survive, to fight was to acquire another bag. And now, at that moment, to fight is to die. To fight is to lose. To fight is to continue living in that unbearable life. Right? I was never that addict or alcoholic that was scared of death, right? They were, you know, but what if you died? If I died, I'd be like better off and at peace. As a matter of fact, at the end, my mother would pray for my death because she believed that at least finally she could get the news that I was safe once and for all. Like, no bullshit. She at the end was praying to God to either cure me or kill me because she could no longer take it anymore. And I was okay with that. Because if I died, then like, finally, the people that I've talked about it, the people that I loved and didn't want to hurt no longer have to be hurt by my actions. And finally know the love that I really had for them. What a miserable existence. What a miserable existence.
I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want you to punch me over it. You're at least 3 arm lengths away from me right now, so I'm not that worried that you're going to punch me. But I did about 48 seconds of research on you yesterday, and I uncovered probably your greatest accomplishment, in my opinion, was being on World's Dumbest Criminals.
Yeah.
Like, I literally am a huge fan of World's Dumbest Criminals because I am a dumb criminal, and I'm really bad at it. But can you talk to us about what led you to World's Dumbest Criminals, please?
Yeah, this story in its entirety is like a whole other segment, literally. You could literally do a series on it because a series of events took place to end me up in that situation that I'll get into in a second that's you'd think is a lie. I'm living in Baltimore. I have this girlfriend that I love, and she lets me live with her and, you know, kind of allows me to remain somewhat normal and have a home, a roof over my head, a shower to get into, a refrigerator to eat from, and a car to drive occasionally. And unfortunately, as it always does, my addiction is getting the better half. She can no longer deal with it, rightfully so, and she's 1 foot out the door, and I could see this. And it's heartbreaking, but it's not personal, it's just business. She has a best friend, a fellow by the name of Damien, and I can talk about this because Damien signed off on the story. And so she kicks me out of the house. She's now taken to living with Damien as a new boyfriend. I'm the heartbroken, disgruntled ex who, poor me, why would she leave me? And I'd leave me too, so. But I used to live there, and I knew how to get into that house very easily. So I would break in, every other day, and I'd steal 10, 20, 50 bucks here or there. And one day I'd break into this house, and I can't find any money. But on the way out, I see like one of those round plastic cylinders that expensive bottles of liquor come in, and it's on the windowsill, and I decide, I'm like, I'd never seen it before, and I open it up, and it's $10,000. And each $1,000 wrap has a $2 bill around it. So I empty the cylinder, and I lace it on the soles of my shoes, and I sneak back out of this house in the back down the fire escape, and I'm gone. And I spend the next 3 weeks in Perkins Projects right next to Little Italy, and I shoot as much dope and coke as I can humanly fucking consume in my body. And the moment that I run out of that money, I'm kicked out of the house of the people I was staying with. And now I'm only 3 blocks away from where I stole the $10,000. So rumors getting out of all these different people that stole it, and I'm hearing about it. Finally, it lands on me, which I knew that it would because I'm a heroin addict and I live there, and it's a predictable accusation. So I get thrown out of the house. I walk up to that very same 7-Eleven with the payphone that I called Bam from. It's all in that area. And I call my ex, right, because I'm heartbroken and I want her to love me and take me back and let's do this again. And while I'm talking to her, he's with her, and they know the number, and they get in the car and they pull up, and Damien proceeds to beat the ever-loving shit out of me. And he said, you might want to leave because there's some people that are looking for you, and you're not going to like what happens. And come to find out, he had paid $15,000 to put a hit out on me. He was a very serious guy. He also called the police and said that I had broke into his house and stole his money. So now I have a grand theft warrant out for me. I have a felony B&E warrant out for me. I have all these warrants. There's a hit out on me. And I have a very good friend of mine who buys me a one-way bus ticket to Gunnison, Crested Butte, Colorado. That's a 6-day Greyhound bus ride. I have no money. I'm detoxing from heroin, jumping from bus to bus. I'm stealing from each stop, food. And finally I get there, and I'm coming off all this heroin. I get a job at this little restaurant at the bottom of a ski town. And the restaurant is called The Last Steep. And I'm washing dishes, and there's tons of coke in this town, but there's no downers. It's like a party ski town. I just want heroin or some form of a opioid. And one day somebody comes in with Xanax, and I buy the whole script. And I eat like 10 of them right out of the gate. And this is a little ski town with one road up the mountain and one road down the mountain. There's one gas station in town with apartments above it. And I'm at the hitching post trying to get a ride up to where I'm living. And I'm freezing cold, and I just got off the shift, and I've ate all these Xanax, and I'm feeling good. And I look at the gas station, and I don't remember this, but the incident report says this is what I did, the statement. I went over to the gas station, I picked a brick up, and I threw it through the window. And I throw the brick through the window, I go in, now the alarm's going off. I steal cigarettes, money, and Mentos. I don't even eat Mentos, but I line my pockets with Mentos. And now I leave the gas station, the alarm's going off. I remember people above standing on the railing looking over at me from the apartments. And I walk back to the hitching post, and I attempt to hitch. And I think to myself, and I'm listening to the alarm go off, I'm like, the damage is already done. I might as well go back and steal more shit. So I go back in to steal more stuff, and that's where I black out again. Next thing, I'm being shooken by some police. And they said, did you break into this gas station, son? And I said, officer, I don't know what you're talking about, but I've been in my bed sleeping all night. And they're like, you fucking idiot, you're covered in glass in the gas station. And I come to, and lo and behold, I wake up in a padded room because they couldn't do my intake because I didn't even know my name because I was so high on Xanax. And I get 6 months out of that, and I'm doing my time. And about 3 months into the bid, we're pretty close to Mexico, so there's a lot of Mexicans running around and people that don't speak English, and no one that I know at all in that jail. And one day they all start calling me dumb motherfucker. There's that stupid white boy that, and I'm like, why is everyone calling me dumb? And lo and behold, the footage of me falling asleep in the gas station made it to the World's Dumbest Criminals, and they had played it in the jail. So as time goes on, I finished that bid. Baltimore did not want to extradite me on those felony warrants. It cost too much. I get out of jail. I go back to Denver, to Colfax. I cop some heroin. Decide I'm flying back to Baltimore. Get back to BWI Airport. Not out at the airport. A police officer comes up, and I give him my ID. And he said, A, are you under the influence of anything? I said, no. He searches me. He finds some heroin on me. Finds some vials of dope on me. And then says, oh, you also have these warrants for the B&E, the grand thefts. So the thing I literally escaped from, I haven't even made it out of the airport, and I'm now being taken to central booking. I get to central booking, get processed. I refuse to pay Damien back his money because I've been around the court system a lot. It's my word against his. There's no footage of me stealing the money. Of course, my fingerprints are in the house because I used to live there. And why wouldn't he blame me? I'm a heroin addict. It only makes sense. I'd blame me too. The prosecutor's trying to give me these plea deals, all this probation, jail time, and I'm like, I'm not taking anything. No. I go out, we fight it. The judge gets annoyed by the case and says, case dismissed, you guys come to a resolution on your own. Because it's hearsay, my word against yours. Damien continues to catch me 2 or 3 more times and really, he splits my head open once, staple, really bad. But then I get sober, and now I have this conscience. He lives in Little Italy where my mother still resides today. I'm tired of going there, looking over my shoulder. I don't want any harm to come to my mother. And now I've started experiencing those steps, everything I thought was an overreaction. And about 2 years into my sobriety, I called Damien. I said, Damien, I'm in this program. I'm a sober guy, and I work these steps, and I'd like to sit down and talk with you if it's okay. Now, this man has paid to have me killed. He said, okay, meet me in this park. And this is like a deserted, desolate park. My mind was like the Starbucks downtown. And I'm terrified. I called my sponsor, and I said, he wants to meet me in a park. This man literally paid to have me killed. My sponsor said, well, you've experienced the 3rd step, right? I said, yeah. He said, well, here you go. God is everything or he's nothing. Good luck. I said, all right. And I went to the park, and I went with $1,000. And I said, hey, Damien. I said, I want you to understand that I made the amends. I apologized for what I did. I told him I needed to make my wrongs right. It was not acceptable. Did I leave anything out? And I want to repay you. And he said, I don't want your money. He said, what you don't know is that I've turned into an alcoholic and I've lost everything in my life, including my business. And as a matter of fact, I just got out of treatment 2 days ago. And I was going to drink today. And you called me right before I drank. And I took that as a sign from God or whatever. And he didn't drink. Since then, I've repaid him the $10,000, and he's still sober over 6 years, and we've become really good friends. So the full circle stories that continue to they don't amaze or baffle me anymore, but I think the general public would be like, that's insane, and there's no way it can be true.
Let me give you a test. Are you amazed by that story?
Yes, these stories are all fucking awesome. They really are.
That's our test right there,
Yeah.
Dude, sobriety is, and it's just dawned on me, I keep saying it will be like the proudest accomplishment of my life. But what we're about to go see, which is my treatment center that I'm going to be opening soon, is going to be the proudest moment of my life.
Everything builds on everything else in recovery. It's kind of like, I like to talk about a ball of spiritual momentum rolling down the hill.
Yeah.
And it's almost like as long as you don't get in the way of that ball, the world is your oyster.
Literally.
And that is literally a perfect explanation of that. So thank you. That was great.
Yeah, man.
Andy, is there anything from your weird normal person perspective that you'd like to ask him?
No, this has been great. This has been fantastic.
Since I can't relate to you in any way, shape, or form.
You know, people often ask, what was it? What was it about the 13th treatment center? Why not 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? And the reality is they didn't teach or share with me anything different in 13 that they didn't in the other 12. But a series of events had taken place where for the first time in my life, the pain had far surpassed unmanageable. Unmanageable is a Monday morning for me. May 25th, 2015, for the first time in my life, the pain became unfucking bearable. A lot of first things happened that day. For the first time in my life, the pain became unbearable. For the first time in my life, I found myself in a position that I was no longer accepting of the outcome. And it wasn't a question of, was it because of my addiction? Like, of course it was. I couldn't even fool myself anymore if I'd liked. And I tried. But for the first time in my life, I found myself in a position that I was no longer accepting of. And referring back to earlier, I couldn't shoot enough heroin or cocaine to escape that reality. The moment of clarity was 24/7. And I was finally willing to do what it took to get myself out of that position. And I reached out to my sponsor, one of the sponsors that I acquired from one of the therapists that I believe wanted to fuck me at one of the attempts of one of the treatment centers that I entered in. So I say that to say I don't give a fuck what leads you to a program and why you buy into it, whether it's for an ulterior motive or a reason or a season. I don't give a fuck. Just buy in. And I called my sponsor, and at this point in my life, I was in a position where people, including myself, felt that it was best to love me from a distance. I completely isolated myself. And now the people that I wanted no part of, which were these sober people, I refused to buy what they were selling. I was not drinking their Kool-Aid. Now are the only people that will take my phone calls. And to make matters worse, they don't even give me $10. So I'm like stuck with them. And you nut jobs, you sober people, you leave your cookouts, you leave your loved ones, you leave your families, and you come pick this hopeless, helpless alcoholic up from BWI airport. And you allow me to stay with you. And you take me to see my parole officer the next morning. My parole officer grants me one more chance and sends me back to the same facility I had been to 4 previous attempts out of my 13 overall. And generally the intake process would read as this. I'd sit in the same chair with the same intake coordinator, and she'd say, okay, Mr. Novak, your insurance will cover you for 90 days. And every time, without fail, my rebuttal would be, well, in theory, 90 days is great, but in reality, I'm more of like a 45-day kind of fellow. May 25th, 2015, I'm sitting in the same chair with the same intake coordinator, and ultimately I had just finally been demoralized in just such a fashion from drugs and alcohol, beaten in that state of reasonableness that the program talks about, that she gave me the same offer without fail. But only this day, I couldn't come back with a counteroffer, because if I said no, it entailed an explanation. And for the first time in my life, and thank God, I was beaten speechless by my disease of addiction. Like I literally, all I could do was shake my head yes. Like I had no more dog in this fight. It was apparent that I had lost this battle. And she laughed and she said, sweetheart, you're in no condition to do your intake. Get up to detox and I'll see you in 4 days. And I take my belongings at 38 years old. I've now just walked into my 13th inpatient treatment center, and everything I own in this world, despite being a pretty successful individual who did some things in life that people would equate to success, happiness, maybe even dream of doing, what my life looks like now is I've walked into my 13th treatment center, just came to after being on life support for 7 days the week before. At Mercy Hospital, the same hospital my mother's on the board of, nuclear physicist at. And all I owned was 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, a stick of deodorant that all fit into this bag that doubled as my pillow, a needle, a spoon, and a restraining order. That's all I had at 38 years old. And I walk in, and I get up to the detox, and I'm met at the door by a 22-year-old guy named Jacob. Jacob is a very happy-go-lucky, eager tech. Now, what I didn't share with you is I had gotten robbed prior to going into this treatment center. I was trying to cop some dope, and when I got robbed, they ripped my front and back pockets completely out, and I had no underwear on, so now like my dick and my ass are completely exposed. They ripped my shirt open, and my only button that stays buttoned is this very top button, and I got these shoes on with one shoestring. I had lost the other one along the way, and I come strolling into treatment looking like a gay East LA Cholo gangbanger because I didn't have a change of clothes, and my sponsor was very adamant about never getting between an alcoholic and their bottom. So rightfully so, and that's where I've kind of, adopted that mentality. But he looks at me, and Jacob, he says, "Mr. Novak, you're back." And I said, "Aren't you a fucking genius?" He said, "I regret to inform you, Novak, but your clothes aren't rehab oriented. You need some underwear, you need some sweatpants, you need some slides." And I had heard you nut jobs say, "A grateful addict will never use again, a grateful alcoholic will never drink again." And it didn't make sense until it made sense. And at that moment it made sense, because now I had found myself in the basement of a Catholic Charities rehab that cost me $2 to get into. There's no electricity. We're in the donations room. I'm holding Jacob's phone with a light as he thumbs through this box, this coming apart at the seams. It's just wet, and he's looking for used underwear, and I'm praying to God that he finds them. And it made sense that whole grateful addict will never use again. And he's thumbing through the boxes. He's looking for used underwear. I'm praying to God that he finds me this used underwear. And he doesn't find me used underwear, but what he finds me is a pair of size 40 women's sweatpants with no drawstring, a woman's tank top, and a pair of size 13 Jesus sandals. I'm not a woman, nor do I wear a size 13, right? But 2 things were happening at that moment that were forever going to change the course of my life. When I say that I'm an alcoholic, all that means is that I'm defiant by nature. I hate authority, and I refuse to conform because I possess this job that places me in a lot of positions I don't like to be in, and it allows me to feel a lot of feelings I don't like to feel, and that job consists of knowing everything, right? So thank you, Chris, for suggesting to me what I should do to save my life, but I'll suggest why you should fuck off, because I know. Standing in the basement, 13th treatment center, just came to on life support, 22-year-old kid handing me women's clothes, shoes that don't fit. I'm grateful that he just did that. I came to the realization, you know what I know? Is that I don't fucking know. The second thing that took place is when he handed me the women's clothes and the shoes that did not fit. I was overcome with a sense of willingness, unlike anything a human could ever produce. Unbeknownst to me, my pain turned into my purpose. Took the women's clothes, shoes did not fit, went upstairs, got a shower, got that Baltimore City smell off me. Never so grateful to put women's clothing on in my life. And I successfully completed that facility. And I literally absorbed every bit of information they gave me as if I were a sponge, man. And they told me, like, it's much easier to stick to the basics than go back to the basics. It's much easier to stay sober than get sober. If you change your perception, you can change your world. One day your defects can become your assets. I went to a 90-day program, acquired a sponsor. Upon completion, on my 90th day, I was up to my 8th step. I had made the list of the amends I had to make. My sponsor said to me, who at the time had 11 years, he said, "You know, Novak, I lived in a sober living house for a year in California after completing treatment, so I went to a sober living house for a year. I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. I lived in that sober living house for a year. My life became immensely better, day by day by day, which turned into weeks, which turned into months, which turned into years. And in that process, I've achieved some really amazing things. On my 8 months into my process of sobriety, my mother, the one that bought me a plot, the one that prayed for my death, the one that served me with a restraining order, the one that believed that it was best if I just died. She called me and she said, "I hate when you come to visit me." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I get so sad when you leave." And see, there was a difference this time. I knew that my words held no more weight. I wasn't calling home with the look at me. I wasn't writing these profound letters to make you think that, I'd completely become a new, changed, reborn again man. I stopped talking for once, and I let my walk do my talk, and my behaviors had changed. And through getting into the process and now becoming armed with the facts, understanding the opponent that I'm up against, having a healthy fear and respect for it, I learned that it had nothing to do with the drink or the drug. It was merely the catalyst that got me to the position where I was finally ready to do the work that was required in order for me to get myself out of this terrible position that I continuously placed myself in. I started becoming accountable for my actions, looking at the part that I played in this process. Through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've had this spiritual experience. The definition of a spiritual experience is simply a psychic change. So I today, Brandon Novak, no longer think how I thought walking into that 13th facility. I had been on parole and probation from 18 to 38. Never a free day in between. It simply followed me from state to state to state to state. 2 months shy of my 2-year anniversary, I signed my release papers. I'm a free man that can go anywhere with anybody, anytime I like. I no longer live in that self-induced prison that consists of a 4-block radius that cost me $10 a bag to get out of. I decided I wanted to get my 2-year medallion abroad. I flew to Paris to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and got my medallion. On my 3rd-year anniversary, I bought a home. On my 4th-year anniversary, I went to Amsterdam to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and got my medallion. Most people don't equate Amsterdam and sobriety, but I'm a free man that can go anywhere with anybody, anytime I like. On my 5th-year anniversary, I bought a home and I turned it into the exact replica of the sober living house I got sober in, and I named it Novak's house, and there's 10 beds in that house. I no longer am crippled or burdened with the fear or notion that I could potentially have a drink or a drug at this moment, because I'm proactive in my sobriety. I understand what I'm up against, and I know that I suffer with a disease called alcoholism, not alcoholism. And I can't stay sober on yesterday's sobriety. Today I have 4 houses with 40 beds in it. 9 out of 10 of the men that come through those doors are there on a scholarship. The why, or should I say one of the whys behind me, is that I refuse to let money be a deterrent as to why somebody can't find a safe, adequate, structured house to live in and remain sober at. May 25th, 2022, I celebrated 7 years of continuous sobriety, and where we started this interview to where we ended this interview is quite different. We're sitting in what has always been a dream of mine, a treatment center that I am opening called Redemption Addiction Treatment Center. I don't play well with others. I don't like being told no. And I was always told to create the environment that I seek. I'm the kind of guy, if I believe it, I can see it. I don't need to see it to believe it. Get here to the short bus. I knew that it was possible. And I knew through having great mentors and advisors in my life that have taught me enough that I am capable of producing this result. So I got a few crazy people that believed in my notion. They got behind me. They were on board with me. This place that somewhat looks in shambles today will be an open, running facility that will allow me to provide the help the same way that it was given to me when I was in a position and place of need and felt so disconnected. And all I wanted was to be met with empathy and sympathy and compassion, not judgment and ridicule. And that's what I will do here. And I'm really excited about this. This is something special, man.
Yeah, that's up for debate. Wow, wasn't that a great story from Brandon Novak? One of the things that I took from that story that was most important was the number of seeds that were planted through all the treatment centers that he's been in. And if you think about it, none of those were failures. Every single one of those moved towards something that is gonna be moving towards recovery. And I love every single bit of that. Because if you look back at my past, I went to 4 or 5 treatment centers. And none of those were failures because they all led me to recovery. So now that leads us here to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for our next episode. So come join us for our interview with Spike Cohen, the 2020 Libertarian Vice Presidential candidate and also an individual in long-term recovery. We can't wait to see you there.